You're listening to A Slice of Therapy with me, Alun Parry. A couple of years ago, I travelled to London for a weekend in order to be further trained in improvisational theatre. Now, improvisational theatre is where you basically make up a scene on the fly. So the actors go in front of an audience, but they don't have a script. They're just making it up between them there and then. And so there's a whole kind of, educational infrastructure that helps people to do improvisational theatre better. And I've got a background in the performing arts before I was doing therapy. And so I went along there in order to kind of sharpen my skills around improv. And the reason why I went to London is because the person who was doing the training there was somebody from Second City. Now, Second City are one of the world leaders in improv. They're based in Chicago, which is kind of the world centre of improv. And they've trained a whole host of people there who went on to become, very famous stars on things like Saturday Night Live and in various TV shows and movies. And so they were sending their teachers to London for a short while in order to train people based in the UK. And so I decided to go along. And I'm remembering one of the scenes that we were in. Everybody was rushing. Now, there's a certain panic that can happen in an improv scene because you don't have a script and you're just having to make this up on the fly, and there's a real possibility of looking a bit daft. And so what can sometimes happen is that everyone starts to panic. And as you start to panic, of course, you start to rush. And I remember this particular scene where everyone was beginning to panic, and so everyone was starting to rush, and the improv scene started to go really, really fast. And of course, once it started going really, really fast, our brains had to go that fast as well to try and catch up, and everything just became more and more difficult. It was almost as if we were trying to get everything done super fast. And the improv teacher from Chicago, she stopped it and she said, "Look, given that you don't know where you're going, because you're never doing an improv scene, you don't have a script," she said, "given that you don't know where you're going, why on earth would you choose to go quickly?" And it makes sense, doesn't it? When you don't know where you're going, when you're kind of exploring as you're doing improv, it would make sense to kind of take it a step at a time rather than to race through it. And in fact, the whole process of improvisational theatre is that you actually do build things just one step at a time. You build wonderful cathedrals simply one brick at a time. And so as we were all forgetting this and starting to panic, and our nervous systems were speeding up, and so we were speeding up, and our brains were then finding it difficult to stay at that pace, and our thinking was having to go faster, she just stepped in and slowed us down and said, "The point of this is to build this one step at a time, and given that you don't know where you're going, why would you go quickly?" Now, if you think of other situations where you don't know where you're going, maybe you're driving a car and you're going down a road, you don't know if the street you need is on the left or on the right. We slow down in that situation, don't we? So we can see the street names and all that kind of thing. We don't just race down the street because we don't know where we're going. And I often think of this example because life is very much an improvisation. When you think about it, everything that you do is an improv. You're making it up as you go along, as you interact with friends, as you interact with the universe, if you like. It's all kind of made up in that moment. And because it's completely unscripted, just like improvisational theatre, then it's another example of something where we're moving towards a place where we just don't know where we're going. And so the advice of the improv teacher from Chicago kind of comes up in those moments where I really feel the uncertainty of life, where I feel that sense of, oh God, I don't know where I'm going here. Because of course, sometimes we do, don't we? Sometimes we have a clear sense of direction, but at other times we're having to find our feet. And it's at those times that, just like in the improv scene of life, sometimes we can feel anxious and panicky, and we'll start speeding up at the very point where the uncertainty arrives. Now, the thing about speeding up when the uncertainty arrives is we get caught in that same trap of going fast at the exact time when we don't know where it is that we're going yet. And so in an improv scene, the way we would deal with that is really simple: to slow down. To slow down and simply focus on the next step. Not to try and overly control the scene, but simply to focus on the next step. And so when I move into these kind of moments myself, where the uncertainty grabs me, when I'm kind of lost in the uncertainty of things, I'll often remember that lesson from that improv school and think that my job in this moment is to slow down, because it makes no sense to speed up given that I don't know where I'm going. And my focus simply needs to be on the very next step. Now, when we focus on the very next step, then we do get a certain amount of control back. We can build this cathedral, this wonderful thing, one brick at a time, just like in an improv scene. And so my invite to you is, next time that you feel that uncertainty and you think, well, what's going to happen? The more that you focus on the end point, and the more that you focus on the uncertainty of the wider journey, then the more uncertain you're likely to feel. So my invite to you is to follow the advice of the improv teacher and just slow things down and focus simply on your next step. And what I like to ask myself in order to help myself focus on the next step when things feel overwhelming and uncertain is simply to ask this: what is my next right action? What is the next thing that I can do which is a right action for me? Don't focus on 2 steps or 3 steps or 1,000,000 steps forward or what the final goal is, but just bring the attention back to right in front of us. You know, I remember when I was a kid and we used to have real foggy days back then. We don't seem to get them anymore. And walking in the fog is a bit like that as well. The fog can descend on us sometimes. We don't know where we are or where we're going, and things just feel difficult and uncertain. But when you're walking in the fog, it's a little bit like being in that improv scene. You don't really know where you're going. You don't know even if you're headed in the right direction. And so all you can really do is pay attention to the next step that you take. And so to summarise then, life is like an improv scene. It's unscripted. It's made up on the spot. We're inventing it in every moment. And often we don't know where we're going. And sometimes that can lead to panic, where at the very moment that we don't know where we're going, we actually speed up rather than slow down. And so, as the improv teacher said, focus just on your next step and do it nice and slowly. Because you know what happens after the next step is you'll be one step forward. You'll be able to see where you are that one step forward. And then once again, just focus on your next step again. And that question to ask yourself is a really simple one. What is my next right action? And if you repeat that question, then you'll take one step at a time. And each time that you take a step, you'll be deciding what the next right action is for you and simply implementing that and slowing down and regaining control over the uncertainty. So if you like this episode and you found it helpful, please do share it so other people can get the benefit. If you'd like to work with me, I'm Alun Parry. You can find out more at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. And please do subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode again. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, and of course it's completely free. So thanks for listening, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another one.